I think it's important that we understand the righteous anger of Jesus that we hear about in the gospel this morning. Because there is such a thing as righteous anger as opposed to unrighteous anger. And so we need to place the anger of Jesus within a proper context and understand why and what caused him to become angry. First of all, we hear about him driving out the money changers and spilling their tables and driving all of the sheep and oxen and all of the birds out of there and said, "Take all this stuff out of here." They had a legal right to be where they were. There was a purpose for their being where they were. You see, the temple was constructed in such a way that it had three courts. There was the outer court, which is the court of the Gentiles. There was the inner court, which is the court of the Jews. And then there was the sanctuary. The church, by the way, is built on the model of the temple. You have the outer court, which is the narthex, the gathering space. You have the nave of the church, which is the court of the faithful. And then you have the sanctuary. Do you remember when the church was built? Some of you may remember when the church was built in 1964, where the baptismal font was placed. In the narthex of the church, because that's where the unbaptized were received. And then they were baptized, and then they came into the court of the faithful. And then at one time there was an altar railing here. And only the priest entered the sanctuary, the same way as it was in the Old Testament in the temple. And so the money changers were situated in the outer court. And they were there with a purpose, because the people who were coming, the Gentiles and all of the Jewish people who were coming with an unclean currency. They were probably coming with Roman currency. And so they had to exchange their Roman currency for temple currency. That was the belief and the practice of the day, of the time. And it wasn't so bad that they had to exchange one currency for another, but the problem is that the rates weren't fair. You get that, don't you, huh? You know how that works. You jack the rate up, and they were lining their pockets. And then they had to move on from the table of the money changers and then go purchase a pair of pigeons or a pair of turtle doves. Now, according to the Levitical law, whatever animal that was offered had to be perfect. You didn't offer something to God that was imperfect. And so they would have purchased a pair of turtle doves or a pair of pigeons and then moved on and then went to another table, and somebody would have said, "Oh, there's something wrong with these pigeons or turtle doves. You'll have to leave those here. We'll take care of them and purchase these. These are perfect." And so it would have cost them more money. Until the next family behind them came along, and guess which pair of pigeons and turtle doves they purchased? You see how that works. And so it was that kind of attitude, that marketplace lying, cheating, stealing attitude, that Jesus was angry about and said, "Take these things out of here. This is a house of prayer." And so in the first reading, you heard proclaimed the 10 Commandments. But from the 10 Commandments came the social laws of Israel. The social laws, listen. "You shall not molest or oppress an alien, for you were once aliens yourselves in the land of Egypt. You shall not wrong any widow or orphan. And if ever you wrong them and they cry out to me, I will surely hear their cry. You shall not act like an extortioner. Do not join the wicked in putting your hand as an unjust witness upon anyone. Neither shall you allege the example of the many as an excuse for doing wrong. You know how that goes. Well, everybody else is doing it. You shall keep away from anything dishonest. Never take a bribe, for a bribe blinds even the most clear-sighted and twists the words of the just. You shall not oppress an alien, for you know well how it feels to be an alien, since you were once aliens yourselves in the land of Egypt. And so when the fabric of a society begins to break down, when the fabric of a society begins to break down, it affects people. It affects how they live. It affects what they believe. It affects the things they say. It affects the things they do. And that's the stuff that people were bringing into the temple. And Jesus made a whip out of cords, and he turned their tables over, and he drove them all out. Now, you need to know that it's risky business confronting that kind of an attitude. Because when you confront people with the truth, there's a consequence to it. And in the end, it is that kind of thing that put Christ on the cross. It's that kind of thing that put Jesus Christ on the cross. And so we're living in much the same kind of time. The fabric of our society is breaking down, and it's affecting the lives of people, what they believe, the things they say, the things they do, what is permissible as opposed to what is not permissible. At the 7:30 Mass, I came into the sacristy, and I had to change the batteries in my wireless. And so I had to go to my coat, get the keys, and unlock the cupboard. We got to put things under lock and key in the sacristy because they were being stolen. You come to church to steal? Even the stubs of the candles that we burned down, those were being stolen. We had to lock that up too. Now you might shake your head and say, who would do that? However, you heard in the Word of God that the same attitude, the same kind of thing that was in the hearts of people is what Jesus drove out of the temple. The same thing. So we're being asked this morning to kind of take a step backwards and examine our hearts and to look at those kinds of things within our hearts that have crept in that have no part of God and God's house. What is my attitude when I come to Mass? Have I properly prepared? How about when I come to communion? What do? Do I just walk out the door like I had to address it again at the 4 o'clock Mass because every time after communion, the back 40 empties out? You laugh. It's embarrassing. There's a consequence for it's risky business for me to bring this stuff up because people don't want to hear it. And trust me, I know. I see the body language. You stare me down. It's like a parent. Like a parent when they have to address things with their children, they have to make a decision whether mom's going to be your best friend or she's going to be your mom. And she's going to tell you, you can't do that here. And you're not going to like it. But that's what moms do. Right, Mom? See? Yep. Because mom doesn't really care if she likes him. Mom wants to know he respects her. The fabric of the society is breaking down. Look, we all go, oh, isn't he cute? But you need to know that we're living in a time when someone who's as cute as this is being treated like a commodity. What's very interesting is that when people want children, they call them babies. Isn't he cute? But when they don't want them, it's called a fetus. It's called a fetus. You know, I remember when I was in the seminary, this is a true story. I'm going to return him to his father before he starts to cry. I remember when I was in the seminary, and part of one of the requirements for one of the courses I was taking was to interview someone who was living a lifestyle that was, had nothing to do with our faith. And so I interviewed this doctor who did abortions. And so I asked him if I could come and talk to him, and I said, I don't want to debate with you. I don't want to, climb you. I just want to talk to you. I just want to find out. I just want to ask you some questions. And he consented to it. And so I asked him, okay, I said, do you believe that life begins at conception? He said, that's a scientific fact. So I thought to myself, if you believe that, then I said, how is it that you are able to do abortions? How do you sleep at night? I'll never forget the answer he gave me. He looked right at me and he said, it's business. You shake your heads and you go, ooh, but that's what happens when the fabric of our society breaks down. We make excuses, we make justifications for the things that we say and do, and we convince ourselves it's okay. And we bring that stuff in here. We bring it in here. And so here we are in this third Sunday of Lent, and what we are being asked to do is to look deep within our hearts and to be honest with ourselves and have some of those attitudes, have some of those marketplace attitudes within the fabric of our society that is broken down, crept in. Crept in. And to eliminate it. Because Jesus is clearly telling us, take these things out of here. The sisters are going to be in the gathering space after Mass. And so there's a little table set up for 40 Days of Life. They're looking for people to go down and pray with them. And so Mother said to me at the beginning of Mass, Father, can you help me out? I said, well, I'll try. And she looked at me. I knew that stare. I said, okay. So they're looking for people to go pray with them in front of the abortion clinic. These kinds of things, okay, that we're talking about continue in our society when good people do nothing. Good people do nothing. So now's the time to stand up for life.